Hello, everyone. I'm sitting here in our backyard, sporting a 2 or 3 day growth as we continue to shelter in place. And I'm amazed at the amount of gray in my beard. But that's not what I want to talk to you about. First of all, I want to let you know that Pam and I have been praying that you are doing well, that you're getting what you need, and that you are trusting the Father for his wise and caring, loving care during these very difficult times. And certainly as the health and the economic well-being of our country is being assaulted in this coronavirus pandemic, many people are anxious and scared, as you know. So I want to take this time to remind us how Paul instructed the Philippians and through them instructed us about what should characterize Christians even in very difficult times such as these. I'm going to read from a very familiar passage, Philippians chapter 4, verses 4 through 7, and then I'm going to make some very brief comments. Paul writes, "Rejoice in the Lord always. Again, I will say, rejoice. Let your reasonableness be known to everyone. The Lord is at hand. Do not be anxious about anything, but in everything by prayer and supplication with thanksgiving, let your requests be made known to God. And the peace of God, which surpasses all understanding, will guard your hearts and your minds in Christ Jesus." Paul says that we as Christians should be characterized by three things: joy, reasonableness, and laying aside our anxieties. Now in verse 4, Paul emphasizes the command to rejoice by repeating it. Rejoice in the Lord always. Again, I will say, rejoice. The reason he's emphasizing is he is saying that it is of first importance that we are characterized by joy. Now, he is not talking about a happiness that is tied to our circumstances. He's not telling us to pretend to be happy about hard circumstances. He is talking about a profound contentment that is independent of our circumstances. Rejoice always, because your contentment is independent of circumstances. And he grounds that contentment in the Lord, who he is, what he has done and is doing for us. Rejoice always in the Lord. And that joy and contentment is always available, even in the most difficult of times. Then in verse 5, Paul said that our reasonableness is to be known to all. Now that word reasonableness, sometimes translated gentleness, has the idea of not insisting on our own rights or our own concerns, but to respect others' concerns and work hard at getting along. Obviously, at least I hope it's obvious to you, that grounding our joy, tethering our joy and contentment to the Lord enables us to pay attention to the concerns of others and thereby work hard to get along with them, to be sweetly reasonable. And he says we are to be known for that. And then finally, in verses 6 and 7, Paul said that we are to cast our anxieties on the Lord. Now notice, he is not saying that we must not have anxious concerns. Rather, he is saying that we must not hold on to our anxieties, hang on to them, play them over and over in our minds, and fret about them. He tells us that in our prayers, we are to cast our anxieties on him. We are to pour out our hearts to God, pour out our anxious concerns to God, and beg him to meet our needs. And we can do this, we can trust him with those needs because we know that he is committed to our welfare now and forever. And then in verse 7, the promised result is that the very peace or tranquility or calm that God has, that characterizes the life of the Trinity, will be given to us as a fortress around our hearts and our minds. Now, that word for mind is the word for thoughts. Paul's talking about our thought life. God's peace will guard your thought life from running wild. So, what Paul is telling us is tether all of your contentment to the Lord, who he is, what he's doing. Base your contentment most deeply on that, on the Lord. Don't insist on your own concerns, but respect the concerns of others and work hard to get along with them. And lay aside your anxieties by continually casting your cares on the Father because he cares for you. As we embrace this teaching of Paul and practice it in our lives, the Lord will give you a contentment, a sweet reasonableness, a thankfulness, and a calmness that will be obvious to others and will glorify our great God. Now, before I sign off, I want to recommend very highly to you 2 episodes of Ask Pastor John. You can go on desiringgod.org and search for Ask Pastor John, and 2 episodes, very current episodes, I would highly recommend for you. One is Grace for Our Hardest Moments, and the other is How Do I Fight My Coronavirus Fears? Thank you, and rejoice in the Lord always. Again, I will say, rejoice.